When I was 14, I lived just down the street from a Walgreens and used to stroll over there to grab some candy or makeup, maybe once or twice a week after school. It was under a 10-minute walk, and I mostly felt pretty secure about it, though at that age, we all think we're untouchable, you know? Anyway, one day I'm in line, waiting to check out with my stuff, and I feel this little tickle on my back. I've got long hair, so I figured it was just a stray piece brushing against me, and I brushed it off. But then that light tickle turns into a firm hold, and I realize someone's got a full grip on the back strap or clasp of my bra. I let out a yelp, lurched forward, almost knocking into the person ahead of me, and spun around to see this guy just standing there behind me. I started to demand what on earth he was up to, but he interrupted me and said something like, "Isn't anybody going to show you how to handle those properly?" I was totally baffled, of course, so I just went, "Huh." And he goes, "Your bra. Doesn't someone teach you how to fasten those things, right?" I reached back and felt that my bra was poking out above the hem of my shirt, and the hooks weren't lined up properly. It was one of those 3-hook kinds, and I must have only gotten 2 of them secured, or maybe the middle one was off or whatever. I was still puzzled, so I muttered, "Okay." But by then I was seriously weirded out. He kept going, "Well, you're strutting around like you're in season. At least adjust your bra strap. Here, let me fix it for you." Yeah, no way. I turned back around and just tuned him out, paid for my candy and lip gloss, and headed out. About halfway home, a car pulls up next to me, and sure enough, it's him. "Jump in, I'll drive you the rest of the way," he yells through the passenger window. I shot back, "I'm fine, thanks, I'm almost there," and picked up my speed. "Come on, it's no big deal," he insists, and then he angles his car right up onto the curb, practically blocking the sidewalk. I shouted, "No thanks," and darted across to the other side of the street. I tried to keep a steady walk, but inside I was panicking hard. Then I hear his engine revving behind me, glance back, and see his car heading my way on the wrong side of the road. No joke. At that point, I bolted straight for my house. It might not have been the smartest move, but I dashed inside, slammed the doors shut and locked them, then yelled for my older brother that some weirdo was out there trying to force me into his car. My brother charged outside, and the guy sped off, thank goodness. After that, I never walked to Walgreens again. I got back home late last night, and in my apartment complex, that usually means all the decent parking spots are already snagged, so I had to park pretty far from my place and start trekking over. There was a thunderstorm brewing, but it hadn't started raining yet, so the air felt charged up and had this fresh, pleasant scent. I figured I'd take my sweet time and do a little loop around the building, coming up from behind it. As I round the corner and head back toward my unit, I spot this guy emerging from the parking lot, slipping out between 2 cars. We exchange nods, and I ease up my pace a bit. He starts walking in front of me, but I notice he's slowing down too, matching my speed exactly. So I go even slower, planning to duck around the corner quick as we get close and bolt straight into my apartment. The front door's right there after all. But he seems hesitant to pull too far ahead, which already has me on edge. He reaches the corner first, and when I come around, there he is at my door, jiggling the knob. He glances at me as I turn the bend and says, "I lost my keys." It hits me right away that he's full of it, and the whole creepy vibe sends my nerves into overdrive. Every instinct screams not to stop, so I keep moving and flash him a pitying smile. He pivots, stares right at me, and asks if I've got a phone he could use or something. Now I'm trapped and freaking out inside. He's acting like he lives in my spot, so I can't slip by him. The main entrance is too distant in the dark, and any quick moves would tip him off that I know something's up. I tell him my phone's dead, which makes my heart pound even harder, because now he figures I can't dial the police either. I step to the next door over and start rapping on it. It's after midnight, remember. The guy's still planted at my doorstep just watching me, and after what feels like forever, my neighbor, who I'm on casual, "Hey, how's it going? Nice evening" terms with, opens up. I blurt out, "Hey, Kevin," and shove right past him into his place. I spin around, shut the door, and lock it tight. I spill the whole story to my neighbor about what's going down, and he heads off to grab his gun while I call the cops. But by then, the guy had vanished, and now I can't wander around my complex without always glancing back over my shoulder. This is all still raw in my head since it just went down yesterday. This was just a regular night around 9 or 10, and I was heading back home from the city center. I had grabbed a sandwich along the way. The bus I take has about 16 stops before it gets to mine, and my stop isn't busy at all. Usually I'm the only one getting off there, maybe with one other person at best. I got on through the back door and found a seat. Almost immediately, this drunk guy came over and asked if I spoke Hungarian. There are a lot of beggars in that area, so it didn't really surprise me. I told him no, which was a lie. I just didn't want to have a conversation. Then he switched to English and asked if I could give him money to buy food. Again, I made up another excuse, said I didn't have Hungarian money on me. In reality, I just wanted to sit quietly and eat my damn sandwich. He then gestured at the food in my hands and tried to get me to give him a piece. He even reached like he was going to break some off. I pulled it back and told him, "Sorry, man. No offense, but I just want to eat my sandwich." At first, he seemed fine with that, and I thought that was the end of it. But no. He went back to sit a few rows behind me, and that's when I noticed he wasn't alone. He had two equally drunk friends with him. The bus started moving, and I could hear them talking. They were speaking Hungarian, probably thinking I couldn't understand. They were saying stuff like, "This guy's such a prick, wouldn't give me a piece. I'd smash his head with a glass, I'm so pissed." Then I heard them agreeing they'd get off at my stop so they could beat me up. My stomach dropped. I'd never been in a situation like that before. I was trying to figure out what to do. And for a while I decided my best move was just to get off at my stop and run for it, use a different route home and just sprint, since I knew I could easily outrun 330-something drunk guys. Meanwhile, the stress killed my appetite. I had about a quarter of my sandwich left but couldn't touch it. I noticed that made them even more pissed off. They were muttering things like, "He didn't even finish his sandwich. Bet he just throws it in the trash when he gets home." Then one of them started talking about how he had a dream where he killed someone, and the other one chimed in that he'd had the same dream. They were acting like it meant something, laughing about it, but it was one of the creepiest things I've ever overheard. Then they turned the conversation directly back to me, talking about my height, my build, saying stuff like, "Yeah, we could take an easy 3 against 1. That's when I realized I needed a better plan. My stop was getting close, and the bus was emptying out as we headed into the suburbs. Finally, I decided to throw them off. A couple stops before mine, at one of the last ones where there were still a few people waiting to get off, I stood up and went to the front door like I was leaving too. There were about 4 people standing there, so I blended in. At the last second, before they could see me step off, I hung back inside. Sure enough, the drunks actually followed through with their plan. They got off at that stop. As the doors closed, I saw one of them start walking calmly toward where I had been standing, but the door shut in his face. I stayed hidden until the bus pulled away. At my real stop, I checked carefully. Nobody got off with me. I honestly think this could have gone way worse. The way they kept talking like they wanted to hurt me for not sharing food, and then psyching themselves up, felt like they really meant it. It was pure luck, I thought, to trick them. Otherwise, I have no doubt they would have followed me off that bus. I first met this guy online the summer before my junior year of high school, when I was 16. His name was Flip. We bonded pretty fast. Our sense of humor matched, and for a while I thought of him as a solid friend. He was a guy and I was a girl, but I never really had romantic feelings for him. I already had a boyfriend at the time, but about 6 months in, Flip told me he loved me. Looking back, I realized how unstable our friendship was. He would disappear for weeks at a time, then come back and say he couldn't bear talking to me because it was too painful knowing we couldn't be together. I know now that he was probably just manipulating me, withdrawing to make me feel like his attention was something I needed to earn. His anger toward women in general was another massive red flag. He told me straight up he hated women, thought they were all bitches, but said I was different, the only true woman he'd ever met. I was young and ignored how creepy that was. Even though our friendship was online, just chatting and FaceTiming, he'd lash out in weird ways. Whenever he was on a break from talking to me, he'd hop on Twitter and post awful things about me, painting me like I was trash. When he came back, I brushed it off because he'd go right back to being fun and sweet. He also bragged about messing with other people, intentionally making them miserable. I honestly believed I was the exception, that he'd never do anything like that to me. Before my 18th birthday, he was 21 at that point, he told me. When you turn 18, you're sending me nudes. You don't get to say no. I laughed it off because there was no way I'd actually do that, but still, it was a disturbing comment. I chalked it up to him being dramatic, but it hinted at how badly he wanted control. Fast forward 2 years. I just turned 18, a freshman in college. In October, I broke up with my boyfriend. Flip saw that as his chance. He started pressuring me, telling me he couldn't stand not seeing me anymore, saying we had to meet or it would be the end. At that point, I still didn't have romantic feelings for him, but because we've been friends for 2 years, I thought, maybe I should give this a shot. Maybe there's love here if I try. He was one of the only friends I had, and I couldn't imagine losing him. So one night on impulse, I bought a plane ticket to visit him. My parents didn't know a thing, and to this day, they still don't. I planned to leave Friday and come back Monday. Since my university was near an airport, it was simple enough to grab an Uber and keep it all secret. Right before the trip, I started having second thoughts. Around the same time, I developed a crush on another guy at my school, and even kissed him the day before my flight. That sealed it for me. I didn't feel anything romantic for Flip, but since I already had the ticket, I figured I'd go, be honest with him, and salvage the friendship. I actually thought it would be fine. When the plane landed, I considered just turning around, not going through with it. But I went out to the terminal anyway, and there he was in his car, staring at me with this cold, piercing gaze that immediately made me uncomfortable. In video calls and photos, he looked normal, but in person he was different, all somehow creepy. We hugged, made awkward small talk, and then drove to his place. I already wanted to go home. At his apartment, we smoked a little, and I laid down to nap. When I woke up, he was spooning me, touching me. I pushed his hands off and told him no. Then I sat up and told him straight out I didn't want a romantic relationship, only friendship. He started crying, begging me to say I loved him, and when I wouldn't, he ran to the bathroom and started lighting stuff on fire. The smoke came out into his bedroom, and when I asked, he just acted like nothing had happened and sat down at his computer to play games, ignoring me. The next few days were a nightmare roller coaster. He'd switch from acting nice to being downright cruel. Some of the things he did and said during that weekend made my skin crawl. He joked about me dying. He faked, lunged at me like he was about to hit me, grinning when I flinched. He bragged about almost posting a snap of me with a location tag so I'd be exposed. He told me he nearly made me sleep in his car one night. Another night, he admitted he stood over me while I slept and farted on me, for no reason other than it was funny. Anytime I tried to talk, he'd cut me off with "shut the fuck up," sometimes in front of his roommates while they awkwardly laughed. At one point, he served me spaghetti and later admitted that he had used expired, moldy sauce on purpose, hoping I'd get sick. He told me he might make me miss my flight and dump me in some random area hours away, instead of dropping me at the airport. And in bed, over and over, he tried groping me, ignoring my rejections and whispering things like, "I know you want it," just holding back. I was terrified, but I played it cool as much as I could, pretending to laugh things off so I wouldn't set him off worse. By Monday morning, my flight wasn't until 8 p.m., but at 11 a.m., he went downstairs for something. I took my chance, grabbed my stuff, and bolted. I didn't dare call an Uber from his house, so I ran down the street to a nearby shopping plaza before ordering one. I thought I was in the clear until suddenly I felt arms wrap around me from behind. It was him. He hugged me, mumbled something in my ear, and then quickly turned and sprinted back toward his place. I kept running until I reached the plaza, called my ride, and finally felt like I could breathe again once I got to the airport. I had to sit there for 8 hours waiting for my flight, but honestly I didn't care. It was 1,000 times better than being trapped with him. Looking back, I feel so stupid. I should have bailed on the trip, or at least gone to a hotel once I got there. But I was young, broke, lonely, and desperate to hang on to what I thought was a friendship. After I got back, I blocked him everywhere, even LinkedIn. He still spent months trying to contact me, but luckily I'd never given him my address. And that's it. I hope I never, ever see him again. I was about 13 or 14 when this happened, just around the age when my parents started letting me stay home alone every now and then. At first it felt like freedom, but being home by myself also meant I became hyper-aware of any little sound the house made. Every time I heard something from upstairs, I'd call my mom in a panic. She would always calm me down, telling me it was just the house settling. She even said she'd heard the same kinds of noises in her old place growing up. That reassured me a little, but over time the noises kept happening often enough that I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was actually up there. One evening I decided I was going to test it out properly. The next time I was home alone, I promised myself I'd be completely silent and see what happened. I moved around as little as possible, barely making a sound. For the first half an hour, the house was dead quiet, and I started to convince myself I'd been overreacting all along. I eventually relaxed and went to grab the TV remote. But just as I reached for it, there was this huge crashing sound upstairs, followed by the thud of running footsteps. That was the moment I knew it couldn't just be the house. There was no denying it anymore. Someone was up there. My heart was beating out of my chest. I was a skinny, small girl, definitely not capable of fighting anyone off. But adrenaline kicked in, and I came up with a plan. First, I grabbed a kitchen knife. Then I wedged one of my shoes under the front door, propping it open just a bit. After a few deep breaths, I shouted, using the deepest voice I could manage. "I know you're upstairs. I'm giving you one chance to leave without me calling the cops. The front door is propped open, and I'll be in the bathroom. Just know I'm holding a knife, and if you don't get out, I will call the police." Then I went into the bathroom with a knife, heart pounding, so hard I swore it echoed. Every second I waited felt like forever. And then it happened, the sound that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. I heard the front door creak open, and the shoe I had propped there being moved aside. That sound told me someone had actually walked out. Terrified but weirdly relieved, I rushed out, locked the front door, and set the alarm system. I never learned who it was, and I honestly hope I never do. To this day, the memory of that door being pushed open and the shoe sliding out of the way still makes my stomach drop. This happened about 6 years ago. My best friend had just moved a couple of towns over, and with our work schedules, we didn't get to see each other much anymore. We made a tradition of going on weekly hikes, though, just to catch up. One day, we picked a trail in a nearby town. It was considered a wealthy area, supposedly very safe, and that detail matters because that's probably why our guard was down. To get to the trail, you had to drive through the park entrance. Right after you passed the entrance, there was a parking lot to the right, then a baseball field on the left. About 100 yards further, there was another small parking lot, which is where we parked. From there, it was only about a 50-yard walk to the start of the trail. It was summer around 5 p.m. There were a couple other cars parked there, so it didn't feel sketchy. We weren't worried about daylight running out too quickly either. But of course, we lost track of time. By the time we turned back, it had gotten dark. Strangely enough, during the entire hike, nothing felt off. Not once did I feel like we were being watched, not even walking out of the woods in total darkness. When we finally came back to the entrance, my stomach sank a little. My friend's car was the only one left in the entire lot. As we were walking toward it, I caught very faint rustling in the trees nearby, just a few feet to our left. My friend kept talking, totally unaware, but I couldn't shake it. I kept glancing back until I caught a glimpse of a silhouette ducking quickly behind a tree. That's when I turned to my friend and said, in the calmest, lowest voice I could, "Don't freak out, but there's someone in those trees watching us. On 3, let's run to the car." He nodded, and we counted. At first it was just a power walk, but then we broke into a sprint, and sure enough, I heard footsteps behind us. Someone was running after us, and I don't know why, but instead of diving into the car, we actually spun around to face him. Out of the trees came this man, dressed head to toe in black, shining a flashlight right in our faces. He walked toward us real slow, like he was wary that we might do something. When he got close enough, maybe in arm's reach, he finally said, "I'm a cop." Right away, 2 giant red flags popped into my head. First, what kind of cop hides in the woods watching people? Second, he never announced himself until he was practically breathing on us. On top of that, there was no police car anywhere in sight. The lot was empty except for my friend's car. His clothing didn't look official either. He had on a black shirt, black vest, black slacks, and black shoes. No badge, no utility belt, no radio, no gun. Just the flashlight and a small notepad. He scribbled something and asked for our names. Stupidly, we gave them. I know, dumb move. At that point, I couldn't tell if this was just some messed up prank or if he truly was law enforcement. Then he told us to step away from my friend's car so he could search it for drugs. We let him, and while he was rummaging inside, my friend lit up a cigarette. The guy even commented about the cigarette butts in the ashtray, like it was suspicious. We just sat there on the curb, waiting him out. Honestly, by then the creepiness started fading into annoyance. He was wasting our time, and it felt like such a bad joke. But it suddenly turned unsettling again when I bent down to take my shoe off, shaking out some pebbles from our hike. Out of nowhere, he came rushing at me with his flashlight and demanded, "Why are you doing that? What's in your shoe?" I froze, holding the shoe in my hand, and said, "Relax, it's just rocks." What he did next chilled me. He spun around fast, stepped a few feet away, and pretended to talk into a shoulder radio like cops have. Except he didn't even have one. He was literally miming the motions. That's when it really hit us. This guy was not right. My friend and I exchanged this look like, "We've got to get the hell out of here." Still, he kept playing along with his act. He claimed he'd called for a K-9 unit to sniff the car for drugs. We argued, told him he was wasting time. Another cigarette got lit. We sat there another 20 minutes waiting, but no dog ever showed up. Eventually, the guy stepped away again, pantomimed another radio call, then came back and said the other officers were busy, so we could leave. We didn't waste a second. We got into the car slowly, careful not to break eye contact, and drove off, watching him the whole time. He just stood there in the empty lot, staring down at his notepad. On our way out of the park, we looked around. Not a single other car anywhere. To this day, we still don't know what the hell was going on. Maybe he was some unhinged guy pretending to be a cop. Maybe he was scoping us out and decided against attacking because there were 2 of us. Or maybe a slim chance he really was a rookie officer completely out of his mind. Whatever the case, it was one of the strangest, creepiest encounters I've ever had. And the scariest part wasn't what he did. It was how unpredictable he was. Back in the mid-90s, when I was living in Colorado, I was dating the son of a woman named Deborah Snyder. Deborah happened to be the girlfriend of Thomas Luther, a man who turned out to be a murderer. He had raped, beaten, and killed several women both in West Virginia and Colorado. One of his victims he brutally attacked with the business end of a hammer. Here's the thing though, whenever I was around him, he was always polite to me. Never creepy, never short-tempered, nothing that would have made me suspicious. I sometimes wonder if it was because I was dating Deborah's son. Like maybe he saw me more as family, and that's why he kept that darker side hidden. Either way, nothing bad ever happened to me directly when I was around him. When the news finally came out about who he really was and what he had done, I was completely shocked. My mom almost had a heart attack when she realized her daughter had been that close to a literal monster. What makes me shiver even now is remembering how many times I rode in the car with him, just the two of us, and giving me lifts home from my boyfriend's house. Deborah, for her part, was always defending him. She admitted he had done bad things, but said she still loved him. That blind loyalty still sticks in my mind after all these years. It's been over 2 decades since all that, but it still makes my skin crawl when I think about how casual it all seemed at the time, not realizing who was sitting right there. And funny enough, my brother now works as a correctional officer at the maximum security prison where Tom is serving his time. Last summer, I was jobless and spending a lot of time at the public library near my dad's office, using their free Wi-Fi to hunt for work. I live with my fiancé and my younger brother, who's a cop, in a small town just outside Las Vegas. We don't get much crime, but we've got our share of meth heads and a growing number of homeless folks. Anyway, it was around 4 p.m. when I got home one day. It's hotter than hell here, like living in Satan's backyard, so I was drenched in sweat. I decided to run a lukewarm bath, put on some Spotify tunes, grab a magazine, and locked myself in the bathroom. My dog Suki, a bull terrier cattle dog mix, was whining outside the door as usual. She's a quirky little beast, suspicious of strangers, which makes her a great watchdog, but she hates water despite loving to dunk her toys in it. While I was soaking, Suki suddenly went nuts, barking like crazy. Then I heard footsteps pounding up the stairs and a guy yelling, "Oh shit!" I froze. I'm butt naked, no weapons, and my brother's Glock is locked in a safe upstairs. Suki's upstairs too, probably tearing into whoever this intruder is. I grabbed my phone, dialed 911, and shouted that I was calling the cops. I could hear the guy cursing, trying to fend off my 55-pound lunatic of a dog. Somehow he broke free and bolted out the back door. Suki chased after him, and while I'm talking to the dispatcher, I threw on some clothes and ran upstairs. Suki came strutting back inside, proud as hell, like she just won a prize fight. I locked her in my brother's bedroom as the cops showed up. Turns out, they caught the guy in a neighborhood, a scrawny 125-pound dude, no shirt, covered in dog bites and meth scars. Apparently, he found our fake rock with a spare key and let himself in. The cops told me to ditch the fake rock. And yet, no kidding, lesson learned. Suki got a juicy steak for her heroics, but for weeks, I was paranoid some other tweaker would break in. Now we keep 2 guns locked up, one upstairs, one downstairs, just in case. Over the weekend, I moved into a new place with my elderly dad, who's in a wheelchair. It's an old house from the 1930s, kind of a fixer-upper with a weird layout and an unfinished porch. Honestly, it's a bit of a dump, but with my credit shot and the need for a wheelchair-accessible spot, I had to take what I could get. I found the listing on Craigslist and called the landlord right away to set up a viewing. From the jump, the guy gave me bad vibes, not creepy at first, just annoying. He kept texting me every day, sometimes multiple times, to confirm I was really showing up, like he was paranoid I'd waste his time. I told him I lived 5 minutes away and would definitely be there Saturday, no question. When we showed up, the landlord was waiting in the yard with this big cheesy grin. I waved, then went to help my dad out of the car and into his wheelchair. The second he saw my dad, his face dropped into a scowl. As we rolled up, my dad stuck out his hand for a handshake, but the guy completely ignored him, looked at me and said, "I thought it was just going to be you." Super awkward. I explained that I didn't think to mention my dad since he never asked, and he just grumbled but showed us the house anyway. It was livable, so we handed over the deposit and moved in over the weekend, paying the first month's rent on the 6th. A few days later, the landlord told me he needed to come by to do some plumbing work. I said no problem, but I'd be at work, so I'd leave the key above the door. I usually get off around 12:30 p.m., and I told him as much. He texted me again at 10 a.m. that day, double-checking that I wouldn't be home before 12:30 because of some safety hazard. I confirmed I'd be back after that, but work let me out early, so I headed home around 11 a.m., thinking I'd just pop in and let him know I was there, but stay out of his way. The house has a weird setup. The front door opens straight into my bedroom, with another door to the living room, which leads to the kitchen and bathroom. I turned the doorknob, and it was unlocked. As I stepped in, I caught the landlord bolting out of my bedroom, through the living room, and out the back door like his life depended on it. I heard his car peel out of the driveway. Freaked out, I checked my room. My underwear drawer was wide open, clothes all messed up, and my nightstand drawer was ajar too. I was stunned, not sure what to do. With my credit and the hassle of finding another accessible place, I felt stuck dealing with this creepy jerk for the next 12 months. A couple of days later, things took a turn. I can't spill too much because my lawyer told me to keep quiet, but I took some advice and set up a night vision motion sensor camera. It paid off big time. I caught the landlord on video sneaking into my house at 2 a.m., trying to peek through my window. With that evidence, my lawyer's confident I'll get all my money back. I've moved our stuff into storage, and we're crashing with family for now. I'm working on getting my dad approved for disability, and some kind folks in the area have offered temporary or even permanent housing. I'm beyond grateful for the support. Even the negative comments lit a fire under me to take action. This mess is pretty much sorted, or at least close to it, and I'm hoping this is the last I'll have to deal with that creep. Back in the fall of 2007, I was 15, living in New York, and juggling a lot as a competitive high school athlete. I was up before dawn for workouts, training hard after school, and gearing up for recruiting season the next year. On top of that, I was struggling with calculus, so my mom hooked me up with a tutor, a friend of hers who really knew his stuff. I've been going to him 3 times a week for about a month when I met Alex, who had the session right after mine. We'd pass each other with just a quick glance and a smile. I was super shy and totally nervous around guys. He was tall, blonde, with these striking blue eyes, and yeah, I thought he was kinda cute. One day, the tutor switched things up and scheduled us together since we were studying the same stuff. I was nervous but secretly thrilled when Alex started chatting with me afterward and asked for my number. No guy had ever shown me that kind of attention, and I was flattered. We started dating, and since he went to a Catholic school in another town but lived near me, we took the morning bus together from my school to his. It gave us time to hang out, and he met my friends. I was surprised when they didn't warm up to him like I did. They said he seemed off, but I got defensive and brushed it off, thinking maybe they were jealous I had a boyfriend. Things got serious, and we started messing around, eventually going all the way in the back of his Ford Escape. That's when stuff started to change. Alex got obsessive about staying in touch, wanting me on the phone all night, every night. It got so bad my mom started taking my phone at bedtime. The relationship was tanking my athletic performance. I was too exhausted to train and even skipped practices to see him, driving 30 minutes each way to his school. My friends finally sat me down and pointed out how unhealthy this was getting. I pushed them away and was spending all my free time with him. I knew I had to end it. I'd fallen out of love, and with college apps coming up, I was set on Brown, my dream school. Alex's grades were slipping, and he had no shot at Brown. When I told him my plans, he lost it, begging me not to go, and saying he'd never get in. I got scouted by 10 colleges, including the University of Illinois, and Alex applied there, hoping I'd ditch Brown to go with him. That was it for me. I broke things off for good. Since he still took the bus from my school, I couldn't avoid him completely. One day I walked past him and his buddies, and they started yelling slut and whore at me. Apparently, he'd spread rumors I'd cheated on him with a bunch of guys. I tried to ignore it, but then I started getting nasty Facebook messages from random people at his school, accusing me of having STDs and threatening me. It got so bad I had to delete my account. That's when Alex's stalking kicked into high gear. Without access to my social media, he started calling non-stop, leaving desperate messages saying he loved me. I was the favorite to win the state championship in my sport, undefeated all season, but Alex showed up at the event. Seeing him threw me off, and I lost the title. I was pissed and heartbroken. That night, I answered one of his calls and screamed at him to leave me alone. That's when the threats started. A few nights later, he called again, saying he had something important to tell me. Stupidly, I picked up and he launched into this chilling rant about how he'd kill me. He said he'd show up at my house with a rope and a knife while my parents were at work, or catch me in the school parking lot where he knew I parked every morning. I started recording the call, let him keep talking until I had enough, then hung up. The next morning, I got to school early and played the recording for my advisor, who called my mom. I felt so ashamed, like I'd somehow caused this. We spent the whole day at the police station, explaining everything about Alex and our relationship. The cops went to his school and arrested him in the middle of class. When I pulled up to the station later to bring food for my mom, I saw him in cuffs, glaring at me like he wanted me dead. I got a restraining order, and he was sent to a mental institution for a bit. He broke the order a few times, but the police didn't do much. His family was rich and well known, so maybe that's why it got swept under the rug. I went to Brown and had to inform them about the restraining order to keep Alex off campus. Even now, over 10 years later, I still get random friend requests and calls from him. I recently moved across the country, far from where he lives, and I finally feel safer. But every time I get a blocked call or a text from an unknown number, my heart skips a beat, wondering if it's him. That whole experience changed how I let people into my life and who I choose to date. About 7 years ago, when I was 17, my parents went out of town for the weekend, leaving me home alone. They trusted me, so this wasn't unusual. I usually stayed with friends or family when they were gone because our house felt creepy by myself, even in the daytime. We live in a small, quiet rural town where everyone knows each other, and it's generally pretty safe. That Saturday, I was supposed to crash at a friend's place, but her parents got weird about me staying over at the last minute. No big deal, I was kind of ready to head home anyway. I left their place around 9:30 or 9:45 p.m. On my way back, I got this uneasy feeling, like I really didn't want to be alone at my parents' house. I called my brother, who was living with his girlfriend and her kid at the time, and asked if I could stay with him. He said it'd be quieter if he just came to our parents' place instead, since his dog would go nuts if I showed up at his. He's a big guy, 6 feet 3 inches, 200 pounds, jacked, covered in tattoos, and kind of scary looking, so I felt better knowing he'd be there in about 20 minutes. To kill time, I stopped at a gas station to grab a snack, figuring he'd beat me home. The parking lot was nearly empty, typical for a small town after 8 p.m. when everything shuts down. As I walked up to the store, a guy standing outside smoking held the door open for me. Standard Southern hospitality, so I smiled and thanked him. Inside, another dude by the door gave me this gross head-to-toe stare and said something sleazy like, "Hey, gorgeous, what's a girl like you doing alone?" I ignored him, but he yelled after me, calling me a bitch. I figured he was drunk or high, just another loudmouth who wouldn't actually do anything, so I wasn't scared, just irritated. I grabbed my snacks, paid, and headed back to my car about 100 feet from the door. Both guys were gone, which was a relief, no more catcalling. As I walked across the lot, I checked my phone to see if enough time had passed for my brother to be at the house. When I looked up, the creep who'd hit on me was standing by the gas pumps, just staring. I kept walking, and he shouted, "Hey, you're supposed to answer when a man talks to you." I tossed back something snarky, got in my car, and locked the doors. As I started the engine, I noticed both guys were now in a car across the lot, staring at me, talking, and pointing my way. I glared back, not wanting them to think I was intimidated. Then the guy who'd held the door made this chilling gesture, dragging his finger across his throat like, You're done." I rolled my eyes, trying to play it cool, and pulled out of the lot. To my horror, their car followed me. Up until then, I wasn't too worried. Most folks around here talk big but don't follow through. But now I was spooked. Instead of heading straight home, I took some back roads that loop around to see if they were really tailing me. They were. When they realized I was testing them, they sped up, got right on my bumper, and started laying on horn. I couldn't even see their headlights. They were so close. I called my brother, told him what was happening, and he said to get home quick. He'd handle it. I was 3 or 4 minutes from the house when I slowed to pull into the driveway. At the end of it, there was my brother, shirtless, arms crossed, holding a pistol, with his mean-looking pit bull sitting beside him. I drove past him into the yard, and the two creeps actually started to pull in behind me. The second they saw my brother, they slammed on the gas and peeled out. I don't know what they would have done if I'd stopped somewhere alone, or if my brother hadn't been there. I still get chills thinking about him standing there like some badass guardian, ready to protect me. I'm so damn grateful he was there. I was 21, fresh out of a breakup, and had just started as a police officer. Feeling like I could take on the world, my buddy talked me into trying Tinder. I matched with this super attractive woman, way out of my league, and we hit it off chatting. She suggested we meet up at her place and go to this open field she knew, perfect for stargazing and chilling. I was pumped, so I drove over to pick her up. She hopped in, all excited, and guided me to this wide-open spot surrounded by woods, with deer and wildlife roaming around. It seemed nice, ideal for a date. As we're getting settled, I noticed a dim headlight in the distance. A van started rolling toward us, pulling up close, almost blocking my car. I told her to stay put and got out to check it out, grabbing my flashlight. The driver, a decently built guy, was super polite. He said he owned the property and was just making sure we weren't poachers since he'd had issues with that. I explained we were just there to look at stars and animals, and he seemed cool with it, wished me a good date, and drove off. I got back in the car, and she was texting like crazy, which I didn't think much of at the time. About an hour later, headlights came speeding toward us again, way faster this time. I jumped in the driver's seat, moved to a better spot to maneuver, and the same van screeched up, nearly hitting us. She bolted out of my car and ran toward a guy, and that's when I knew I was in deep shit. I yelled for them to back off and get on the ground, but they didn't listen. The guy charged me, knocking me down. I managed to flip him onto his back and get up, but then she grabbed a metal pole from the van, screaming that they had a gun and I needed to hand over my money and truck or I'd get hurt. With my cocky new cop attitude, I said hell no. She started crying, saying they didn't want to hurt me, and the guy backed off toward the van. I pulled my concealed firearm, told them I was a cop, and ordered them to the ground. After a tense moment, they froze shocked. I called 911, gave my name and badge number, and said I had 2 suspects at gunpoint and needed backup ASAP. I gave the dispatcher the best directions I could to this random field. Then they both took off running. Stupid, young cop me chased the guy into the woods for maybe 30 seconds until I heard 3 loud pops and saw muzzle flashes. My invincible attitude vanished, and I sprinted back to my car, peeling out of there like my life depended on it. I drove to where I'd picked her up, called dispatch again, and had officers meet me there. Of course, the first to show up were my sergeant and field training officer, who were surprisingly chill but definitely called me a dumbass rookie more than once. We headed back to the field, and the van was still there. They told me to stay quiet and only come out if shots were fired. They checked the van and found meth right on the center console. When they searched further, they looked pale and told me to come see the back. I walked over and saw knives, duct tape, lighter fluid, rifle ammo, handcuffs, and what looked like dried blood in the front passenger seat. They also found an AR-15 rifle and 2 handguns. Backup and detectives rolled in, and they confirmed the van was stolen, with stolen plates too. The blood turned out not to be blood, but everything else was bad enough. I still get crap from the guys at work about this, but thank God no one got hurt. Safe to say, I'm done with online dating for good. I've never been a fan of the NYC subway. It's convenient on a good day, but between the tight crowds, claustrophobic cars, weird smells, and occasional rats, it's pretty much my personal nightmare. Still, I deal with it. One Sunday evening, after leaving a breast cancer fundraiser around 7 p.m., I was riding the subway with my little sister, just a few stops from home. We were chatting quietly when the train started moving. This guy, medium build, wearing a gray pea coat and a beanie, locked eyes with me, hustled over and leaned in close, sticking out his hand for a handshake. He said something like, "Hey, you're real pretty. What's your name?" I pulled back, giving him a look like, "Dude, what are you doing in my space?" and shook my head, clearly not interested. Out of nowhere, his vibe flipped from sweet to pissed. He started yelling, "You stuck-up bitch. You think you're better than everyone. You ain't shit, you ugly clown." Everyone in the car turned to stare as he kept screaming, his stance all aggressive. Then, to my shock, he turned to my sister sitting right next to me and tried the same thing. "Wow, you're pretty too. Can I shake your hand?" and reached toward her. I wasn't having it. I stuck out my arm and said, "Hey, leave my sister alone and back off." He smacked my hand away, and that was it. I was heated. I stood up, realizing I was about eye level with him, maybe 5 feet 9 inches or 5 feet 11 inches. I told him, "Don't touch my sister." Things got blurry after that. He said something, shoved me, and we started scuffling. I landed a solid uppercut to his jaw, which only made him angrier. He tackled me to the ground, kicking me and screaming, "I'm gonna kill you, bitch." It felt like forever, but 2 people on the train finally rushed over and pulled him off me. One guy was like, "Leave her alone, man. What the hell?" The conductor announced the train was being held at the platform, and I stood there shaking as the crowd pinned him against the doors. He was clawing at the air, cursing and staring me down like a maniac. The doors opened, and they shoved him onto the platform, forming a barrier to keep him out. He pounded on the glass, screaming, "I'll kill you," so loud you could see the veins in his neck, his eyes bloodshot and wild. As the train pulled away, someone pointed out he dropped his phone during the fight. It was unlocked, so I snooped. Found his name, social media, selfies, and texts that suggested he was dealing drugs, probably crack, based on the prices and lingo. That might explain his unhinged outburst. Still shaken, I went to the police station with my aunt and uncle to file a report. One cop had the nerve to say, "If it turns out you stole this phone, you're in big trouble." Like I'd made this whole thing up and turned myself in just for kicks. I handed over the guy's info from the phone, but they said they couldn't use it without a warrant. They took the phone, and that was that. A few months later, an officer showed up at my house with photos of similar-looking guys, but I couldn't pick out my attacker for sure. I never heard anything else from the cops, and I couldn't find the guy on social media again. He's probably still out there, riding the subway, ready to snap if someone else brushes him off. I keep wondering what would have happened if it was late at night with no one around to step in. That guy meant it when he said he'd kill me. When I was 16, my mom hooked me up with a babysitting gig for a friend of hers, watching her 2 daughters, ages 10 and 7. The older one had a serious attitude at first, but she warmed up after I became their regular sitter. Fast forward a few years, I was 19, fresh out of high school, juggling college, a part-time job, and hanging out with family and friends. I hadn't babysat for that family in about 2 years. One day, my mom asked if I'd befriend the older girl I used to watch, saying her parents thought she needed more social interaction. I remembered her attitude, but agreed to help since I'm a sucker for lending a hand. I started inviting her to hang out with my group, usually when younger kids like my friend's little siblings were around. We were like the big sisters of the crew, so it was normal to have mixed-age gatherings. She opened up to me, sharing that she was battling depression, felt unloved, and had even thought about ending it all. She admitted to cutting herself, which hit home because I'd struggled with similar feelings at her age. I wanted to be there for her, offering advice and a listening ear, trying to help her branch out. But things started getting weird. When I invited her to group hangouts, she'd act distant and moody. We'd show up somewhere fun, like a friend's house to watch movies with 6 or 8 of us, and she'd immediately pull me aside, saying, "I want to leave." At first, I'd coax her to stay a bit, but she'd insist on bailing, even when everyone was having a blast. It got so bad I stopped inviting her to group stuff and just hung out with her one-on-one. Then she started calling me all the time, 2 or 3 times a day at first, then ramping up to 7 or 10. I had my own landline with an answering machine too cheap for voicemail, and I'd come home to a full tape of her messages. "Where are you? Why aren't you picking up? Who are you with?" It was creepy. I told her I was busy and only home late, and to just leave one message, but she kept at it. Life got busier, and I naturally drifted from her, not on purpose, just caught up with school and work. But then she started showing up wherever I was, malls, coffee shops, places I never told her about. We lived in a big suburb, so it wasn't like she could just bump into me by chance. She even figured out where I worked and went to college, which I'd never shared. It was freaking me out. I ignored my gut and let her sleep over a couple of times during a college break, thinking she was just a kid who needed a friend. Big mistake. One night turned into her refusing to leave. She stayed for days, getting mad when I said she had to go home. My mom finally stepped in and told her to get out. She threw a fit but left. I started avoiding her like the plague, ducking into crowds if I saw her, not returning her calls. Then things got next level creepy. Her family moved to a house around the corner from mine, where their living room window looked straight into our backyard and my bedroom. I found this out when I visited their place with my mom, who was still friends with her mom. I got chills seeing my room from their house. My mom tried talking to her parents about her behavior, but they brushed it off, even encouraging me to stay friends with her, like they wanted to pawn her off on me. It all came to a head one morning when I was home alone. I'd just gotten out of the shower around 10 a.m. when the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole cops. My stomach dropped, thinking something happened to my family. They asked if someone named B lived there. I said no, she was an old friend I hadn't talked to in a while. They asked for my ID, and one officer followed me to my room to grab it, which confused me. We sat in the living room, and they explained they got an anonymous call saying a girl named B at my address was suicidal and might have already hurt herself. I was floored. I gave them her contact info and address, and they left. I called my mom right away, shaken, and stayed at her office until my classes. A few days later, at a coffee shop with friends, one of them said they'd seen B, and she was dressing like me, same hairstyle, same friendship bracelets I loved, trying to look like my twin. We didn't look alike at all, so it was bizarre. Then, on a 3-way call with friends, I heard the wildest part. B had made the anonymous call to the cops, giving my description and address, hoping they'd think I was her and haul me off to a psych ward so she could take over my life. I couldn't believe how unhinged she was. Thankfully, I was about to move away for a new job, and my family came with me. It was the best decision ever. She got worse, harassing my friends for my new address and number, even stalking one friend's brother to intimidate him. By 2012, social media was big, and I got a friend request from her on Facebook. My heart sank, but I blocked her instantly. She had her friends message me, asking why I wouldn't accept her request. I blocked them too. She kept trying, hitting me up on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere, even making fake accounts with my name and photos. I reported them all, documented everything, and sent it to the authorities. I started using an alias online and locked down my accounts with tight security. In May 2016, I turned on my phone one morning to find no service. I called the phone company, and they said someone claiming to be me had tried to transfer my number to a new phone and change the account name to hers. I explained she was a long-time stalker, and they fixed it at their corporate office, adding extra security. I haven't had issues since, but I'm always on guard. She waited 16 years to keep messing with me, so I'm not letting my guard down. I haven't filed a restraining order since she doesn't know where I live now, but if she ever finds me, I'm ready to take action. After living in Vancouver, British Columbia from 1984 to 2001, I moved back home to be closer to my aging mom. I was a single mom with a preteen, settling into a small town outside the capital region. I worked in daycare for a while but got hit with double pneumonia, so I had to switch things up. I went back to school, did a course in customer service and call center work, and landed a job selling a book series on the history of Christianity. Eventually, I scored my dream job at a craft store, starting part-time but picking up extra shifts. The store required knowing how to knit or crochet and being familiar with their products. Since I moved between locations, I often wore my apron home, forgetting my name tag was still on. It was a cross-stitch tag with big turquoise letters on a white background, making my unique name easy to spot from a distance. I was also dealing with some personal stuff and started attending meetings to get a handle on my drinking. One late summer night, after a meeting, I was waiting at a bus stop to head home. I could have walked, but I was wiped out. My boyfriend offered to pick me up, but I told him I was fine taking the bus. Big mistake. I wish I'd taken him up on it. I was chilling at the stop, listening to either Billy Gilman's Everything and More or Barry Manilow's Greatest Hits Volume 3 on my Discman. The area is a bit rough. Prostitution, drug deals, and crime aren't uncommon, but it's where I could afford rent, so I stayed. While I'm minding my own business, an old truck pulls up, and the passenger window rolls down. The guy inside calls out, "Hey, crafty girl, wanna party?" I got some good stuff. He used my name, which I didn't even register at first because it's so uncommon. I brushed him off, saying, "Nah, I'm good, thanks." He pushed, "Come on, it'll be fun." I snapped back, "What part of no don't you get?" Just then, I saw the bus coming and breathed a sigh of relief. He saw it too and pulled away, but then did something weird. The bus stop is near a Catholic church and a dead-end lane by a community park with a playground and pond. He backed his truck into that lane and watched me board the bus. My creep radar was screaming, and I went into fight or flight mode. I called my boyfriend and asked him to meet me at the 7-Eleven near my place, telling him to walk instead of driving since it'd be faster. The bus driver must have sensed something was off because he asked if I was okay. I told him I was being followed, and he let me stay near him. He dropped me off at a red light by the 7-Eleven where my boyfriend was waiting. I'm not big on PDA, but I laid it on thick, hugging and kissing him to make it clear I wasn't alone. The truck sped off fast. After that, with winter setting in, I stopped walking or taking late buses, and my boyfriend started picking me up. I put it out of my mind until one spring day when I saw a picture of Thomas Vogler on the front page of both major newspapers. My stomach dropped. It was the guy from the truck. He'd been convicted of murder, acquitted on another charge, and was questioned in several other killings and disappearances. He's locked up now as a dangerous offender, meaning he's never getting out. I'm so damn thankful I dodged that bullet, but it was way too close for comfort.